good evening and welcome to another edition of the Captain Lou Extravaganza Live here on the 12-ounce sports platform and networks, including Zingo TV channel 761. And of course, we're live on our Twitter page, Facebook Live, YouTube. Let's see what else. Twitch. And of course, right on our website, which is the Captain Lou 12-ounce sports radio. Here we go. Tuesday, January the 18th. How's everybody doing tonight? Are you recovered from your wild card weekend, super wild card weekend? Indeed, it was a great weekend of football. Yeah, I know there were some blowouts, but you know what? It was football. And I'll take 6 games of blowouts. It's football season. I'd rather be watching that than, some Northwestern, Utah, Idaho State, whatever. I can only watch Kentucky versus Florida for the 19th time on CBS. Give me a blowout with Kansas City and Pittsburgh or Philadelphia and Tampa Bay. God bless you, Mitch. I know you're a Philadelphia Eagle fan, but I'd take that any day. And there were some good games. We'll talk about all 6 of them here on the show tonight, and we'll preview obviously next weekend's divisional round playoffs. A lot of times that's one of the best weekends in the year for football. I'm sure it is. And we've got some dynamite games to talk about this coming weekend. Starting off with the first game, which is going to be Tennessee and Cincinnati. Follow that up by a primetime game Saturday night with Green Bay and San Francisco. Boy, there's been some classic matchups in that over the years. Who can forget 1999? That game. I mean, there's been epic games between those two teams in the playoffs. And it seems like lately San Francisco's got Green Bay's number. So we'll see how that plays out in the frozen tundra this weekend. Saturday night, 8:15 Eastern time. Who knows what the weather's going to be like at Lambeau. It'll be cold, but that's not going to stop the fans or Green Bay. Then, of course, Sunday, you've got a big doubleheader as well. Tampa Bay and Los Angeles. Yes, Matt Stafford, congratulations. You won a playoff game. The monkey is off your back. I'm happy for you. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a moment, about Detroit fans wanting him to lose for a better draft pick. Really? Come on. And, of course, the nightcap on Sunday night, which could, on paper, this is looking like it could be the best game of them all. That's Kansas City and Buffalo. Boy, I tell you, Buffalo looked great, 47-17 over New England. And Kansas City, of course, they steamrolled Pittsburgh. Took them a while. Took them a little over a quarter to do it. But, boy, once they got rolling, I got to tell you, Patrick Mahomes, he's hitting his stride. It's going to be tough for him to get beaten as they try to go to a third straight trip to the Super Bowl. So, hey, I want to take a moment to thank Mitch Bernstein, the Burn with Mitch. Had me on his show in the second hour of his show at 7:05. Great talking football with him. And, we've got a great, it's a fun Tuesday night here on the network. We get Mitch Bernstein from 6:30 to 8, and then yours truly from 8 until 10 o'clock talking sports with you. What a better way to spend a Tuesday night, right? Kind of winding down from the previous weekend and starting to get yourself geared up for the second half of the week. What a better way than to have us bring you some sports talk and opinions here on the show. Speaking of sports talk and opinions, coming up at the bottom of the hour here this afternoon, or tonight rather, we're going to have my tag team partner on Aquinas College hockey broadcast. Mark Van Vliet will be joining us. We'll talk some ACHA hockey with him. Aquinas off to their second semester with a couple of wins, big wins over fellow ranked opponent Lawrence Tech this weekend. Kind of an emotional weekend. We've talked about it here in the past, about the passing of Alex Klakotka from Aquinas. It was a very touching tribute. We'll talk about that, and we'll look forward to what's ahead for Aquinas and the rest of the ACHA as the road to St. Louis is starting to kick into gear. We're less than 2 months until Nationals in St. Louis. We're going to give you all kinds of coverage on that. We'll get some coaches on, more coaches starting next week when it comes to ACHA hockey as we gear up for that. It's a great time of year with hockey playoffs coming up at the college level in March, and we'll give you the latest in all who's going in every division to St. Louis coming up starting on March 10th, 2022. Again, that's what, 50 days? About 53 days from now, so we'll keep you tuned on that. So, and then at the top of the second hour, a great treat. You know him as the janitor. I call him the godfather of 12-ounce sports. Jeff Beck's going to join us. We're going to talk all the playoff games with him as well, and we'll get his take. I want to ask him about the situation in Cleveland. I don't want to call it tenuous, but what do they do with Baker Mayfield? I want to get his take on that because they've got a team, I think, that is built to win. The window is there, and I want to get his from him. He's a Cleveland fan. He's been a diehard. He's been with them through thick and thin, mostly thin. And, he's like me. We're masochists, me being a Lions fan. We haven't won anything. One playoff win in 64 years, 65 years. They're celebrating our 30th year since we last won a playoff game. How sad is that? So, that's, but we're going to talk to Jeff about that. We'll get his take on the playoff games from last weekend and who he thinks is going to win the Super Bowl. We'll have some fun with Jeff coming up at 9 o'clock Eastern time. So a lot of fun tonight. Mark's always a great guest too. We're going to talk a little, we'll go talk some old time hockey and whatnot, as we always have fun talking NHL and of course the ACHA with Mark. So we invite you to stick around tonight. A lot of fun. We're going to dissect, trisect, you name it. We'll touch on Major League Baseball with their lockout. And, it's funny. I was telling Mitch, I've been on, for where I work, I'm on our union bargaining committee. I've been a part of 3 bargaining sessions, 3 contracts that we've bargained. Every 4 years we do. And it's funny is he brought up a great point. We'll talk about this in the second hour if we got time. But, I've been a part of them. We sit in a room. We're there for 8 days, 5 days, whatever it is straight. And we get it done. And this is posturing on both ends. And I know there's a lot at stake, but there was a lot at stake for us. But it bothers me because, I know it's early. Spring training doesn't start. Well, it's supposed to start in about 3 weeks. And it's funny as I looked on ESPN.com and I was kind of reading the lockout story, and the proposal that they had is so convoluted. There's so many tweaks to it and conditions about, a shortened year of eligibility for arbitration. It's mind-boggling. It does take a lawyer to go through it. But I looked at the top and it said Detroit Tigers and Washington Nationals, February 26th for their first game of spring training. I wouldn't bet on it. I got to tell you that right now. I don't think it's going to happen. I think what you're going to see is they'll wait till March to hammer something out. If March 1st, then they're going to prolong spring training to start, say, March 15th. They'll prolong the start of the Major League season about 2 or 3 weeks. I don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to be as bad as 1994, I don't think, because there's so much more to lose. I really believe that. The owners, after COVID, they're trying to dig from under that, all the losses that they had, and, the players as well. So we got a lot to talk about there. We'll talk about the NBA, the NHL. We'll go through the standings there. Lots to go over here on the show. Really glad you could join us tonight. And again, want to thank you, the viewer, for taking time out every week to join us. As without you, we can't make this happen. And again, our sponsors, which includes BetUS. We'll talk more about that as well. Before we go to break, I want to touch on this. I know Mitch, this was one of his burns, and he asked me this was my burn. I watched the games this weekend, especially on Sunday. I had hockey and basketball Saturday, so really couldn't watch a whole lot. I listened to bits and pieces of the 2 games Saturday. I watched that Dallas game, and I listened afterwards. And, I'm a referee baiter with the best of them. I'll admit it. I yell at them when I'm watching it on TV. But it's funny is, everybody thinks the referee screws their team. I get on here and I rant and rave about how Dallas screwed Detroit in 2014. And I know that gets old. And I know that you interview players and coaches after the game. and sometimes the player will say something in the heat of the moment. I try to look past it. But what Dak Prescott said after that game about the referees was unacceptable. It's inexcusable. Here's a guy making $40 million a year. This isn't his first press conference, okay? He's been doing these a lot. This isn't the first game he's lost. This isn't the first playoff game he's lost. The referees didn't cost you that game, big fella. Your ineptitude, your coaching ineptitude, you guys just, you're not that good. And for him to get on there, and after someone told him that they were throwing garbage at the players, and then they said, oh, you were also throwing at the referees. Well, good for them, he said. Really? I haven't heard him retract that or say he's sorry. I lost a lot of respect for Dak Prescott. I know he's been through a lot personally, but you don't say that. This is a Cowboy team that, to me, is at a crossroads. You know, they're probably going to keep Mike McCarthy because of the ego of Jerry Jones. I'm not one for firing coaches, and I just think we live in a society where you give a coach a couple years, if they don't win the Super Bowl, they're gone. I mean, look at the Giants, look at the Lions, look at, the teams that don't do well. I mean, they're already talking about firing Cliff Kingsbury. Are you kidding me? Really? He took him to the playoffs. It's a stepping stone. But what Dak Prescott said really irked me. You don't say that. You just don't do that. You can, I don't have a problem with a guy criticizing a referee for a call. Everybody else gets criticized. Coaches, players. You can get on your podium and say, yeah, the referee screwed up. I think he screwed up. And I don't think a guy should get fined. But telling people it's okay to throw trash at a ref after a game, believe it or not, buddy, you're a role model. People are going to see that and they're going to think it's okay. It's one thing to throw prophylactics in an end zone. We could joke about that. But you're condoning throwing trash on a referee. You get some drunken fans in any game. I don't care if it's Dallas, Detroit, Green Bay, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, wherever. I don't care what type of game it is, NBA, NHL. You know what's going to happen? There's going to come a day where they have wire fencing all around. It'll be like that, the scene out of the Blues Brothers were in that country and western bar when they're throwing beer bottles at them. That's what you're going to see. And it just bothered the hell out of me when he said that. Really irked me. And he shouldn't get away with it. He'll get away. He might get a $12,000 fine or whatever it is, whatever the legal mandate. That's chump change. That's like $1 to you and me, throwing in the swear jar. So Dak, grow up. I understand it's heat of the moment, but that's not your first rodeo in front of 1 million cameras and microphones. You're better than that. At least I hope you are. I don't know if your football team's better than that, but I think you are. Speaking of that, when we come back, we'll talk about some of those games, including the Dallas game and whatnot. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight. Stick with us. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Platform and Networks and Zingo TV, channel 761.
12-Ounce Sports has a new home for betting. BetUS.com is the official place to place your bets and support 12-Ounce Sports. All you have to do is go to BetUS.com and type in the promo code 120ZE and you'll instantly get a deposit bonus. This is America's favorite sports book. And remember, always gamble responsibly.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Captain Lou Extravaganza. We are live here on Zingo TV, channel 761. And, of course, our platform and networks, Twitter, Facebook Live, Twitch, our YouTube channel, and, of course, our network, which is the 12ouncesportsradio.com. Check us out. Also, check out all the stories. You know, I've written a few articles on there myself. Glenn Kaplan is one of the major writers on there. Eric Kraus as well. Check out our lineup of the great shows that we have here on the network, including right before us, The Burn with Mitch. I'll tell you, he's got some dynamite guests on there every week. You know, I was blessed to be on his show tonight talking a little playoff football, but he gets a lot of baseball-oriented guests and some great old. He had Mark Gubiza this year, so ex-MLB player. He's going to have more coming up. I'll tell you, he is setting the standard on Tuesday nights. I gotta pump up my game here and keep up with the great Mitch Bernstein. So we got a great doubleheader here on Tuesday nights. We've got Philly Pete. We got the AM Drive, Minor League Rando, you name it. The Sports Stance, the Sports Guys, the Rome Show on Monday mornings. Tell you, World Hockey Report with with Cody Janner, Cody Jansen rather. He is the lead voice of the Saskatchewan Rush of the National Lacrosse League. I tell you, things are looking up here at 12 Ounce Sports, and we want to invite you to check it all out here on the network. Well, we went to break. We talked about the Dallas Cowboys, of course, and Dak with his asinine comment before the break. We'll leave that alone. You know, what he said, it's over. I hope he learns from it. Probably won't, but I hope he does. But let's talk about that game. Everybody is. I might as well get my 2 cents worth on it. You know, I picked San Francisco to win that game. It's just something I saw about Dallas in the last few weeks. Yeah, they beat a Philadelphia team that was undermanned, but Dallas just looked really out of sorts. You know, it just, you could see it. I just saw something with the confidence level. And they went into that game against San Francisco. Now, granted, the 49ers were on a roll. You know, I get it. They beat L.A., and they did it in overtime. I mean, what a great finish to that game. But I like how, you know, San Francisco's defense really, you know, just clamped down on Prescott. But I still thought that they had the firepower to win. I picked San Francisco to win in a close one, but I never thought it would end the way it did. It was like neither team wanted to win that game. San Francisco jumped out to a big lead. It was 23-7 at one point. You know, Dallas going for the field goal surprised me, but as it turned out, it wasn't such a bad idea. And, you know, I look at that quarterback sneak, that San Francisco, it just, you know, it was weird. Is if San Francisco plays that way against Green Bay, they're going to get boat raced. I hope they learn from it. Now, my biggest worry about Green Bay, or about San Francisco, obviously, is, you know, is Bosa going to play, and Fred Warner? If those two are not in the lineup, you know, there's no doubt Green Bay is going to win. I really believe that. And I also, from a San Francisco perspective, I worry because Green Bay, I think they've got that chip on their shoulder. They feel they should have went to the Super Bowl last year. They kind of spit the bit against Tampa Bay. And I know Aaron Rodgers has got that in the back of his mind. He's always looking for something to get him going. He can't blame the media for that last year. I know he likes to blame the media for a lot of things. But I think last year's game left such a bad taste in his mouth. He's going to be geared up for that, and it starts this weekend. I picked Green Bay to go to the Super Bowl. I'm sticking with that pick. I just think, you know, they've got more horses than San Francisco does. I think it might be close for a half, as I told Mitch in his show earlier tonight. I could see it maybe close until halftime. Then I see Green Bay pulling away. That seems to be their MO. They're well rested. And they're the best team in the NFC for a reason. I think nobody gets in their way going to the Super Bowl. I really don't. So it's going to be interesting to see there. But looking at Dallas, they're kind of at a crossroads. They kind of remind me, they're over the cap already. What are they going to do next year? They got some players that they got to pay. They got to pay Cooper. They're going to have to pay Lamb. They're going to have to pay the defenders. Zeke, in my opinion, Zeke's going to be gone. He did good for him, but he's had a lot of injuries. You could tell he's not the same. He just doesn't have the knees he used to have. He can give you spurts, but they need something more consistent. And I truly believe they could pick up a running back in the second or third round of the draft a lot cheaper to spell Tony Pollard. I think he's going to be the future of the Cowboys, and he's cheaper. This is where the salary cap comes in. But Dallas, is Mike McCarthy really the answer? Now you're starting to think maybe it wasn't so much Aaron Rodgers. Maybe it was Mike McCarthy. He just looked like, I don't know. You look at that sideline, and you look at it after that when they made that fake punt. It was a beautiful play, beautiful throw. I mean, had him right on the money. They get up to the line, and they're so helter-skelter over on the sideline. Obviously they tried to make it look like San Francisco would get a delay a game, 12 man on the field, whatever. Then all of a sudden they think, oh my God, we got to get everybody out here with like 12 seconds left on the play clock. Then they look like they didn't know what to do out there. That was typical, and that's coaching. The penalties, everything else. I mean, if you're not a Dallas Cowboys fan, you're loving it. I'm not a huge Cowboys fan. I really, I don't have a dog in the fight right now. I'm pulling for Matt Stafford only because he was a Lion and he's getting his chance. He put 12 years in with Detroit. I'm pulling for him to win. I really am. But that game was just, wow, unbelievable. I look back at that and I think this is typical Dallas. The PR machine that is the Dallas Cowboys, they're like the Lakers. Lakers right now can, just incredibly average. They'll play good one night and they'll stink the joint up for two. This is Dallas. They feasted on the NFC East. They go 6-0, big deal. They got beat by the Rams in the regular season. They got beat by Arizona. They got beat by the Raiders, Tampa Bay, all winning teams. The Cardinals. They showed that they're not that good. Yeah, they won 11 games, 12 games, or whatever it was. But they feasted on a porous division. And when they play winning teams, they and let's not even go into their road record in the playoffs. They have the same amount of road wins in the playoffs since 1996 than the Detroit Lions. 0. They've won a couple of home games here and there, but to bag on the Cowboys a little bit more and Dak Prescott, I'm going to cut him some slack because everybody thinks Tony Romo is the greatest thing since sliced bread. How many home playoff games he wins? 1 against Detroit. Who can forget when he fumbled the snap on the extra point try or field goal try in 2006, I believe it was, or 2007, whatever. He had a lot of opportunities to win. He put up a lot of numbers. He's not a Super Bowl quarterback. He put up a lot of numbers. Everybody calls him great. What did Tony Romo do in the postseason? I'm waiting. He's done nothing more than Dak Prescott. So you give me Dak Prescott and Tony Romo, the two best quarterbacks this franchise had since Troy Aikman. Troy Aikman's way up here. Those two are right down here. They haven't won anything. And it all starts there. And now it's the nature of the beast for Dallas because they had to pay him. The going rate for quarterbacks is $40 million. He's got his contract. Next year is going to be very interesting in Dallas for Dak Prescott. The pressure is going to be on him. It's going to be fun to watch to see if he melts, or if he rises above what he's done. Because I'll tell you, you can scoff at this, and I listened to Mitch, in our last show, And and his first guest he had before me, Philadelphia, it's a stepping stone. They were 9-8 or whatever. They made the playoffs. They got 3 first-round draft picks. I personally think they should keep Jalen Hurts and build with those 3 first-round picks, just like the Lions have too. Now, Detroit's nowhere near those guys yet, but they're building a culture. And I want to talk about that too in the last part of our show. How, I'm going to call out another national media guy. I hate to do it, but, he's on my poop list a lot. But Dan Campbell is building a culture. Everybody laughs at him. Now, all of a sudden, Hines Ward gets an interview with Houston. And I'm sure Hines Ward's going to be a great coach. He's good. They're going to hire him to build a culture, and he can get assistants around him. Isn't that what Dan Campbell's doing in Detroit? Trying to build a new culture that they have never had? Well, they haven't had since Bobby Lane. But yet, Detroit gets blasted for it. And if Houston hires Hines Ward, they're not. That's another thing that burns my ass. Well, besides the flame about that high. But anyways, you're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network. Mark Van Vliet, my tag team partner, director of hockey operations for Aquinas College, is set to join us here in a moment. We'll talk to him. As a matter of fact, there he is. So let's go to the Captain Lou Extravaganza guest line and bring in my tag team partner. We just talked about him. Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas College, Mark Van Vliet. Mark, how are you, my friend? Welcome back.
Lou, I am doing well tonight.
All right. Hey, great weather out there. It's hockey weather. You and I talked about it in our broadcast Saturday night with Aquinas. ACHA hockey, Christmas time is over. The marathon is over. Now it's time for the sprint. They had a couple of great games last weekend against Lawrence Tech.
Yeah, I mean, from an Aquinas standpoint, great weekend against a tough opponent. Ken Gaffney's Lawrence Tech teams are always well prepared and certainly well coached. We feel very fortunate, obviously, about coming out on top. But you can't rest on your laurels here because we got Michigan Dearborn waiting in the wings, and then a week or two after that we have Indiana Tech. So it's a like you said, it's a sprint. And we got to put it behind us and continue to look forward.
Well, Mark, we'll talk more about the rest of the ACHA schedule, but I do want to talk about we had the ceremony for Alex Klikotka. We've mentioned it here on the show about what happened.
Yeah.
It's just very unique what they did, and credit to Lawrence Tech for being a part of it. Taking the knee before the puck drop. Just a unfortunate, a fine young man that passed away, and I know it's been tough on the kids and the coaching staff. Talk a little bit about what we did on Saturday night there at Aquinas.
Yeah, well, as you know, Alex passed away unexpectedly on the night of December 17 and 18, and just essentially went to bed and didn't get up, and so it stunned not just the Aquinas College community, but the hockey community at large. Mm-hmm. He had played extensively at Kenai in Alaska in the North American Hockey League. He had played his AAA hockey here in Grand Rapids at Fox Motors. So the outpouring was, once this thing just sort of became public and known, the outpouring of support was just tremendous. And there were articles in, goodness sakes, the Anchorage newspaper and just all from all over, people that knew him, people whose lives he had touched from hockey, and then also beyond hockey. And you really sort of got a sense of the magnitude of the number of lives that this young man had touched in his 23 years here. And so, yeah. And then of course you have the weeks that follow, and then there's the funeral and the memorials, and there's all kinds of things that are going on. But what you're faced with is sort of, and certainly from an Aquinas hockey standpoint and Coach Pomoda is, hey, we got to start this thing for the second semester. Yeah. And how do you do that? How do you these guys are hurting. They had just gotten home from exams, and Alex Kokoka, as we talked about, was the WAC Hockey Player of the Week the week before, and so these guys were just sort of lost, and a lot of them got home. They felt the need to fly right back to Grand Rapids from wherever they were, and or travel back, and just spent the Christmas vacation and the holiday break just in Grand Rapids, being with each other, consoling each other, and friends and things like that. But then you have to talk about the transition, and how do you restart the second semester, and that's sort of the things that Jordan and I and the Aquinas College Athletic Administration talked about. How do we get going on this? And so that was sort of the idea behind Saturday night. As you mentioned, Ken Gaffney was gracious. Lawrence Tech hockey family who did reach out to us during the difficult time after Alex passing and express their condolences. So we knew that they were, as you would expect, the classy guy that Ken Gaffney is in the LTU program. So we knew that they were on board with that. We went up there and played Friday night, this past Friday night. They had a moment of silence as a tribute to Alex, as a visiting team, as a home team, our visiting team, which I thought was a classy move. But then we had to turn around, come back and play here. And I think people just, as you saw, Lou, they just gravitated to Southside Ice Arena. Yeah. They just had to be there. People who we hadn't seen in years, alumni that had graduated, hockey alumni, Max Berry, who I ran into in the lobby. People had just come in that felt the need to be back here to pay tribute, and that led to just probably, I don't know, 750, 800,000 people at the rink, and it was packed. And I think a lot of that was just people felt the need to pay their respects and encourage the hockey program and them, the guys on the hockey team, that they were, to lend their support and let them know that they were behind them, and as they sort of put the pieces back together, that they were supportive of that. So that was a huge uplift for the guys. I can speak directly to that. They were just overwhelmed with the support from the community. Yeah.
Mark, it's funny, before we move on, it's when you learn to be a coach, you learn the X's and O's, where to drop the puck, how to teach them to get back on defense. But this is something you don't learn about, man. I tell you, just, and my kudos to you and to Jordan for, the way that you've been able to guide the team through this. And, it's just, my hat's off to you guys. It's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Lou. Thank you very much. Jordan did the majority of the heavy lifting. He was actually on a recruiting trip in Chicago at a tournament, USPHL Premier Tournament. And he called me in the early morning of December 18 to let me know. And, he was there with his coaching staff, and they had just started those tournaments are from Friday to Sunday, Thursday to Sunday. So he called me just at a loss for what to do. And, nobody, there's no training for this, right? But Jordan is he's a really grounded guy, and he felt the sense. He loves Aquinas, he loves the community, he loves the game. So he just let his heart sort of tell him what to do, and he would call me every day or so, and every other day, and ask just hey, what do you think about this or that? But he had to do the heavy lifting there, and did a lot of work, and of course I had COVID during that time, and he subsequently had COVID. So this was, there was so much going on, not just the semester break, and not just obviously the death of Alex Kokoka, but there was just a lot of variables going on. But he handled it just in a tremendous way. And then as we looked to the home opener, which you saw. We just sort of counseled on how to do this right. And credit to Aquinas College and the athletic administration, Nick Davison, our athletic director. They were fully supportive and on board and worked with us to make something meaningful, but yet not. Yeah, how do I say it? Not over the top,
Right.
Not you don't want to take away from what's going to happen here with the game. On the other hand, you certainly have to acknowledge it. So there's sort of a middle of the road sort of a tap dance that you have to do. But I found out later that Alex's father was indeed in attendance at that game.
Oh,
so and he came down and talked with Jordan after the game in the locker room and to the guys. So. On one hand, Lou, that's a very private matter between the team.
Sure.
You always hear that slogan, we're going to keep this in the locker room. And that's a lot of that had happened. And that's just not, anybody else's business but Aquinas College hockey and the team. Yeah. And they grieved and did their own private type of thing in the confines of the locker room. And that's not our business, right? So that's what happened there. And then for those of us who are surrounding the team and wanted to support the team, we also had to have the vehicle to sort of grieve and support. And that's what Saturday night did for us. And I thought it played well.
Well, Mark, now that we've, we got through that weekend and everything was great. Now we have, like you said, we've got to move on. And, to get into, not to look too far ahead with the Nationals in March, but what's at stake, Mark, is an automatic bid to Nationals. And that starts with, trying to maintain what Aquinas is doing and possibly catch up to an Indiana Tech team that's in first place. But first is Michigan Dearborn. We at Aquinas have had a great rivalry with them over the years. They've had our number for quite a few years. We were fortunate enough to do pretty good with them first semester. But a huge weekend of games against them. I think they're ranked 17th in the country, so it's going to be fun.
No, it's going to be great. Chris Haltner always, as fields a fantastic program, well coached, and fabulous support from the the institution itself and the fan base over there. And first semester, we swept them, and it was obviously very close, but. Then you realize that the year before they had canceled their season, so they were sort of picking up from starting over again, and they were still a formidable opponent, and even after having taken a year off. And so you would expect by now you're going to see an entirely different Michigan Dearborn team than you saw the first semester, because quite frankly, Chris has had the opportunity to put the pieces back together and put himself in, imagine taking a whole year off. Your season's canceled, and then you come back and are still now qualifying for nationals. That just shows you the kind of program they have and the kind of coach Chris is, and dear friend of ours. But all friends of 363 days a year. But for the 2 days, you're going to be foes. And that's the thing. And I think we talked about it a little on Saturday. I mean, this gauntlet, and I'm not discounting Concordia, who bit us right before Christmas break. Even though they're ranked I think 40th in the country or something like that, you can't take them for granted either. And then but those you figure are the things teams that we should win, or the games we should win. But then you look at, as you mentioned, Michigan Dearborn and Indiana Tech. Boy, if you took 3 out of 4 out of that group, then you'd be looking in a pretty good situation. 500 maybe, but if you lose 3 out of 4, you're not helping yourself, and now you're relying on help from other teams and other losses and other situations. And then we finish it up with Davenport. Again, it's a rivalry game, and that's one of those things where you throw the record book out the window. So, again, you got 6 games there where if you go 4 out of 6 or 5 out of 6, you're feeling pretty good about it. Yeah. But if you go less than 500, now things look a little sketchy. So, you really got to help yourselves in this sprint period.
we talk real quickly about Indiana Tech, Mark.
Yeah.
They had a hell of a run last year in the Nationals. What did they get to the championship game? Or I think it was,
Yes,
and
runner up.
boy,
Yeah.
they've built on that this year. They're one of the top teams in the country again, and Frank's done a good job. I look at the progress that he and you and Jordan have done with your respective teams. You're growing each year, moving up in class, and it's just you guys are building foundations, and it's really fun to watch.
Well, the thing about that, if you turn back the clock back to 2008, 9, 10,
Yeah.
Frank was involved with Wayne State and trying to resurrect that program. And I had the pleasure, when we were working with Davenport, actually he was at Delta Community College, as I
Okay.
recall. And anyways, just the real history there. And but had a chance to sort of reconnect with him when we were starting our program, and he was trying to resurrect the Wayne State program. And you've met Frank Sr.
Yep.
And you know how embedded the Cristofaros are in the Detroit hockey community. I mean, they're legendary, and they know everybody. And they've just done a great job. And Frank Jr. has done such a great job with Indiana Tech, and he has real knowledge of the Detroit east side of the state hockey community, and recruits heavily, as you would expect, out of there, and does just a fantastic job. And then as a program, Indiana Tech just runs a great hockey program there. So Frank's teams are always going to be well prepared, well coached, play with a gritty edge, that sort of Detroit edge, we like to call it. Just like Ken Gaffney's team do at Lawrence Tech, sort of kind of a nasty twist to it. But it's great. It's great hockey. And we're going to have to run that gauntlet, and we're going to have to get through that if we're going to get to nationals. But Frank, as you mentioned, he always finds himself at nationals again, and that's a credit to him and his program.
Absolutely. And, before you get to that, something that has grown to be a fun tournament, Mark, is the WAC Conference tournament, which I think is going to be down in Fort Wayne this year. Again, a chance for all you guys to meet one more time to get yourself hopefully all tournament ready. But it's a fun weekend of hockey down there too.
It's a fabulous weekend of hockey, always well done. And what's great about the WAC is it's recognized varsity sport, so you get the support of the WAC, the commissioner of the WAC, obviously, Rob Miller, who is in charge of basketball and all the other sports that are in the WAC. But he shows up for this tournament. He loves hockey. He loves the varsity status of the WAC, and so that adds to it. And the other thing that makes it so intriguing is that the WAC tournament is included in the last ranking period.
Oh, wow.
So you have a chance to avenge some pain that you might have that might have incurred in the last weeks of the regular season. So if we do come out 500 or something like that against those teams down the gauntlet, you have a chance to sort of make amends in the tournament, and that's really what happened last year. We were sort of on the bubble, and we went in there and beat. I think we beat, as I recall quickly, Michigan Dearborn, and then we lost in overtime to Lawrence Tech. Indiana Tech.
Yeah.
So that was something that pushed us over the edge, and that having that tournament ahead of the final ranking adds another level of significance to the tournament that you wouldn't think would necessarily be there. So when you look at the rest of the 8 to 10 games of our schedule, then you throw in the WAC tournament, a lot of hockey left.
Yeah.
But boy, I tell you what, January 14 today or something like that, and this thing is going to be wrapped up by the end of February. So that's 6 weeks away, and we're done. And
it's crazy.
Yeah, like you said, it's a sprint, and but it's the fun time of the year.
What you like to say, no place for a nervous person.
That's what you say, Lou. That's
I
what
got
Mickey
it from
Redmond
you.
says.
That's right. We'll take it from the Mick. Hey,
Yeah.
One more thing before I let you go. Something that I've been doing, I'm going to write an article for our website within a week. I've been trying to get from everybody. The theme of it is someone that you grew up as an athlete or something that you watched, Mark, that was larger than life for you, that you just thought, wow,
Oh,
I'm gonna, from your youth. And I don't want to, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but if there was one athlete that you just you wouldn't know what to do if you walked up to when you were a kid, who would it be?
well, you know what, Lou? That's a great question. And what's interesting about my answer, it's not who you think it might be, because when I grew up on the west side of the state,
Mm-hmm.
you really couldn't, you knew about Gordie Howe and
Uh-huh.
you knew about it, but you couldn't see Gordie Howe. It was, hockey wasn't televised. It wasn't on the radio on this side of the state. And it was, we could read about it in the papers, but there wasn't the internet. There wasn't, we didn't get the free press. So it was a bit of a distant type of a thing where you loved hockey.
Mm-hmm.
You were playing hockey here, but you really couldn't connect tightly as if you grew up in Detroit, right?
Yep.
On the other hand, I have to be honest with you, my hero would be Al Kaline of the Detroit Tigers. Now, the Detroit Tigers, all 162 games or whatever they played back then, were on TV on WKZO out of Kalamazoo, and we would watch the Tigers. And my dad played college baseball, so we grew up baseball fans, but also Tiger fans. An interesting story. We moved from Minnesota to Grand Rapids in 1960, in the summer of 67.
Okay.
And who won the World Series in 1967 but the Minnesota Twins? But I had moved to Grand Rapids, and I was heartbroken that Tony Oliva and Harmon Killebrew, all my idols, I had to move away from. But I was in the process of adopting the Detroit Tigers, and of course in '68 with Mickey Lolich and that crew. But that really became my hero. So I would say to you, Al Kaline was just the sort of the guy that I looked up to.
What a great
How's
story!
that?
That's
How's
awesome.
that for an answer?
That is a great answer. And it's funny, Mark, because when I went to Central and I graduated in '88, my first job was over in Holland at a radio station there. And you're right. Even in 1989, you couldn't. The Red Wings weren't on TV over there, and there was nobody carried them on the radio. I had to listen to the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yes,
I used to get them on
Pat
AM.
Foley.
Oh God, yeah. Oh man, what a great combination! And I'd have to drive to Grand Rapids just to listen to them with, Bruce Martin. So.
Oh, great!
You know. Oh gosh, that's funny you mentioned that because it brings back memories of thinking. I got to go to Grand Rapids. I got to go to Lansing just to watch them. On TV.
I know. It's just it's a different. That's so different about the way it was then.
Yeah.
Where we just poured. We couldn't get enough information about NHL but being in Grand Rapids, all you got was the Grand Rapids Press, and quite frankly, the Red Wings were and by that time, and I'm talking. 70s and 80s, they were not a good hockey program and not under the Norris family, but just sort of relegated to the back pages. And so we grew up playing hockey, but really never idolizing anybody on the Red Wings because we just didn't have access to that kind of information. So, but the Tigers were, oh my goodness sakes, my family, my dad and mom and I would, and my kids or my brothers my brothers, we would go to, not only Tiger Stadium, but we would also, because we're in Grand Rapids, it's actually easier to get to Comiskey Park and watch the Tigers play the White Sox, and so we would often do that. And I was born in Chicago actually, so we had a lot of family there. But so sometimes just driving to Chicago to watch the Tigers play the White Sox, but. When you talk about Denny McLain and Mickey Lolich and Al Kaline, and then you got Trammell and Whitaker and Tom Brookins, it just transcends. Those were heroes for me. So
yeah, me too. It's funny, and you're in the same boat I was. We would drive to Milwaukee to watch them play the Brewers. It was closer
there you go.
Yeah, it was like a 4.5 to 5 hour drive instead of 8 hours to go to Detroit. Mark, this has been great. I'm up against it. I got to let you run. Thanks for coming on. I'll see you Saturday for that big matchup at Aquinas against Michigan Dearborn. Keep that voice rested up.
Thank you, Lou. Always a privilege, and good luck.
All right. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Mark Van Vliet, Director of Hockey Operations for Aquinas College. Great story. Again, it was such a fun, it was an emotional night on Saturday for, the tribute to Alex Lakota. And he explained it to a T, and it's, it got me thinking about that, and I'm glad I brought it up to him. You see all these coaches, they know X's and O's, and they go to school for years and years and years about this. They go up through the ranks, you learn about recruiting and this and that. But when something like this happens, there's no textbook for it. There's no there's just no training guide for something like that when a player of yours passes unexpectedly like that. And my kudos to head coach Jordan Promoda and to Mark Van Vliet for their, Director of Hockey Operations for, what they did and how they handled the situation and how they have handled it. Again, that's it's awful difficult. It's crazy, and it was a very touching tribute to it. And if you want to see it, check out my Facebook page. I shared it on there. I took a home video of it, if you will. And it was very cool. They did a 3-horn salute. They announced his name as in the starting lineup. They all went out to their position. Both teams took a knee at center ice. Again, Ken Gaffney, head coach Lawrence Tech, he deserves a lot of praise for going along with it. Then they did a 3-horn salute for number 3. It was really, really nice. And, again, and another story that Mark brought up, and it is weird, about not being able to follow the Red Wings in Grand Rapids in Michigan. For those of you that are familiar with it, Grand Rapids is about 2.5 hours from Detroit. And like I told him, when I moved over there, I lived in Holland, right on the lakeshore in Zeeland area. Nobody carried it; was blacked out. So and they never carried it over there, and nobody had it on the radio. So the only time I could listen to the Red Wings was when they played the Blackhawks. So, and it was the craziest thing. It was 1989 when I lived over there. God, it seems like, an eternity ago, but how ironic was that? So anyways, we're going to step aside. When we come back, we've got the janitor coming up. We're going to talk some football. Jeff Beck, you've heard him and you've seen him on our network. He does a lot of stuff for us. He's the backbone. He's the godfather, and he's next right here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza Live. You're on the 12-ounce sports platform and networks and Zingo TV, channel 761.
Twelve-ounce Sports has a new home for betting. BetUS.com is the official place to place your bets and support 12-ounce sports. All you have to do is go to BetUS.com and type in the promo code 120OZE and you'll instantly get a deposit bonus. This is America's favorite sportsbook. And remember, always gamble responsibly.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports platform and networks. You can watch us on our website, 12ouncessportsradio.com. Of course, our Twitter and Facebook feeds, Twitch, our YouTube channel, and, of course, Zingo TV channel 761. Again, thanks to Mark Van Vliet, our Director of Hockey Operations from Aquinas College, my tag team partner on our broadcast over on AQSaints.com. Great stories about his larger-than-life athlete. And speaking of larger-than-life, right now let's bring in the Godfather, the janitor. You can catch him from time to time on his shows here on the network. Pleased to bring in Jeff Beck, our janitor. Jeff, hey, thanks for taking time out tonight. How are you, my friend?
How's it going, Lou? Now, if I wasn't on a diet, I would think larger than life you were making a comment about my beer gut, but no, we're working on that. I'm doing good. It's cold here. We just got 14 inches of snow here just south of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I got a question. Is that the lamp from A Christmas Story?
It is. It is.
I love it. I saw that up there. I'm like, that looks like a leg from here.
That, it's fragile, so you got to be careful with it,
Oh, it breaks easy, huh?
Well, you know how he said it in the movie. I'll never forget that. That's a running joke in our family. And he's like, "Ooh, it must be French, fragile." I got a trivia question about that movie before we get into football. You've seen the movie Slapshot, right?
Yeah, once.
Oh, okay. Well,
so I might not get this question right.
I was going to say, what character was his wife in there? But we got to keep it clean, so we'll just leave it at that. She was a hockey player's wife in Slapshot. So she was Hammerhand's wife. So it's kind of.
Now I'm going to have to watch that movie because this is the second time this has come up in a conversation with me, Slapshot. So I'm going to have to watch that again.
It's a cult. It's a cult classic for sure. Hey,
nice.
This weekend I got you on to talk some football, and we had some great games this weekend. And it's funny is. I was listening, we do banter back and forth with the guys on our network, and I was listening. As much as I'm not a big Brady Quinn fan, I agree with them 100%. I don't care if they have 2 versus 7 games and are blowouts. We had football to watch this weekend. Jeff, we had 6 games, man. It was awesome.
It was awesome, and not only is it awesome, but I think people get kind of caught up in the seeds.
Uh-huh.
You and I are old timers. We've been watching a lot of football our lifetime. There's not a huge difference between first and eighth. I mean, they could have the top 8 in each conference if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it, it wasn't just 2 versus 7. There were blowouts in 4 versus 5, 3 versus 6. It's just the way the NFL goes. Maybe somebody game plans better. Maybe the weather is in one team's favor versus the other, or matchups. But I don't get caught up in the seedings with pro football. This isn't college football. I don't think there's a lot of mismatches in the NFL.
No, you're right. And you don't have the point spreads that you have in college football for sure. I mean, obviously you had a couple of double-digit ones this weekend, but those are done. And, it just leads into this coming weekend, Jeff, where we've got 4 fantastic games. But were you surprised at all, though, with some of the games last weekend in those blowouts? Me personally, I thought Philadelphia would put up a little more of a fight against Tampa. I was surprised at how ill-prepared the Eagles looked.
Well, I'll give you that one because I think, did it get out to 28-0 or 31-0?
It was 31. Yeah.
Okay, so the Eagles woke up. And I thought the Eagles would have a good enough defense and run game to kind of keep that game close.
Yeah.
But the biggest surprise to me was the Bills scoring a touchdown on every drive except for the drive where they took a knee, because I thought defensive guru Belichick, who he's done it a lot this year, has come out with game plans. They did it against the Bills where they only threw 2 passes and ran the ball like 50 times. That was the biggest shock to me, honestly, was the Bills scoring a touchdown on every drive.
They played, they looked lights out. And again, that sets up the matchup with Kansas City, the last game of the weekend. We'll talk about that in a second. Kansas City played Pittsburgh. I know that Pittsburgh is like the dreaded enemy to you, being a Cleveland guy. But, Ben Roethlisberger, I'm not a fan of him personally, but he's had a hell of a career. He's Canton bound. There's no doubt about it. But you could tell he looked a shell of himself in that game.
And morally speaking, I have no respect, but football-wise, he's had a great career. Now, their problem in that game is the Chiefs' run game isn't very good, but the Steelers really didn't run the ball that well, which forces Big Ben to throw 30, 40 times, and we saw all season. You start throwing it past 10 yards this year, he's not doing very well. He's just old, and he can't move, and the Chiefs had his number. Now, I don't think it's going to be that easy for the Chiefs going forward.
No.
There's a lot of good teams left in the AFC.
There is, and I think there's two great matchups over there. We'll talk about that in a second. And I got to get your opinion, just like everybody else, about the Dallas Cowboys. They're the media, the PR machine. They're like the Los Angeles Lakers, the New York Yankees. They get all the fluff and everything. They're going to go to the Super Bowl every year. They've got Jerry Jones, but I got to tell you, personally, Jeff, I don't think they're that good. And they got outclassed, outcoached. I just don't think they're that good.
I think I saw a stat going into the playoffs that they were the only playoff team that didn't beat a 9 or 10 win team, something like that.
Yeah.
But this is my problem with pro sports. I love it, the NFL. I haven't watched the NBA in a couple of years. My friends are pressuring me because the Cavs are good. But this is the problem with pro sports: is the major markets get all the love, and sometimes it's a smokescreen. I didn't actually get surprised that the Niners won that game.
No.
Now, full disclosure, my nephew's been a diehard Niners fan his whole life, so I kind of secretly, when they're not playing the Browns, root for them.
Okay.
So I've watched them 8 or 9 times this year, and I was not surprised. I actually thought they could have beat them by 2 touchdowns. I'm not a big Cowboys guy, and I don't know what they're going to do because they didn't look like a 2 seed. Is that what they were, a 2 seed or
they were a 3
seed? I felt like they got beat in every phase of the game there.
Oh, I do too. And you can place the blames on the refs all you want, but they just look. I thought they looked disheveled a little bit against Philadelphia in the last game. I know they won, but something just didn't look right. And San Francisco, like you said, they came out. Their defense is playing well. Now I'm a little worried, as I said earlier, about Bosa and Warner. If they're not going to play, then I think they're really going to have an issue against Green Bay Saturday night.
Well, if Bosa doesn't play, I don't see them beating the Packers because they're going to need pressure on your favorite quarterback in the league. But the other thing, you said the refs. I'm the first to I'll admit I've had flags thrown on me when I coached football for yelling at refs, and I'm the first to blame the refs if they make a horrific call. That was not the refs' fault at the end of that game. No. And then Dak in the press conference applauds the fans for throwing trash at the refs. I mean, he needs to be fined. I know he walked it back today because somebody in the PR department said that this looks horrible. You can't do that.
Right.
But that was not the ref's fault. You got to know the rules. The center judge has got to run all the way from behind the quarterback to the line of scrimmage and touch the ball before you can snap it. That was just a terrible play.
Well, and here's the thing. I understand these guys are in the heat of the moment after the game. They've lost. They're pissed, whatever. But you know what? This isn't his first rodeo in front of a camera, in front of microphones. And these guys, these reporters were not baiting him. And I have no sympathy for the guy or for Mike McCarthy. I think it's a PR nightmare. And I lost a lot of respect for him. He's making $40 million now. He should know better. And, if you're still pissed, don't go in front of the camera.
Yeah, quarterbacks that are paid that much are supposed to be almost an extension of the front office, and that's not how you carry yourself. And the other thing I didn't understand as an X's and O's guy is I think it's easier to throw a Hail Mary from the 40 than it is to try to run a regular play from the 23, because at the 23, the Niners can drop their linebackers in the coverage, and they're practically already covering the end zone, whereas from the 40, it's a longer run, and it's a little tougher to cover. I don't know why they tried that play anyway, because we've seen so much NFL in our lives. It's hard to get a 3rd and 10.
Yeah.
Let alone a one play from the 25. I felt like they should have kept taking advantage of the sideline being wide open, get another 10-yard out, and then throw a Hail Mary. But that's just me. I can Monday morning quarterback all I want.
That's a great point, because I was telling my wife, I said, it kind of reminds me of, like, if you've got 3rd and goal at the 4 or 3 and you get like a false start, so it's 3rd and goal from the 9. You've got a better chance of throwing it in the end zone because you got a little more room to operate. And I'm with you.
Yeah.
And I said, this kind of correlates to that. I didn't understand it, but hey, you know what? San Francisco's moving on. Dallas isn't. So it's another year we can listen to him say, well, next year will be our year. But,
right.
Hey,
yeah.
let's get to the games this weekend. We already kind of touched on a little bit. Again, you mentioned it. I'm not the biggest fan of Aaron Rodgers, but what he does on the field is just absolutely phenomenal. And as I told Mitch on his show tonight, I think that he's got a chip on his shoulder from what happened last year, and I just would not want to face Green Bay right now. I just think they're a team of destiny. I really do.
Oh, yeah, California cool. Dak Prescott had 254 yards passing on the Niners, and if the Niners roll in there without Bosa putting pressure, not that he's their only player, but he's a difference maker.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be able to stand back there and pick them apart. He's got probably the best receiver in the NFL, and they got a pretty decent run game. So the Niners could be in trouble if Bosa's out.
I agree, and I think Green Bay is going to win by double digits in that game. I know your nephew likes San Francisco, but I just think they're on a roll. They don't want to lose at Lambeau again. They've got it. They've gotten that home field advantage for a reason. The other game, I got to tell you, I'm rooting for Matt Stafford, and it really burned my craw when all these people in Detroit rooting for him to lose to get a better draft position in the bottom of the 1st round. I mean,
oh geez,
if they would have lost, Detroit would have got the 23rd pick. Now they may only get, quote unquote, the 30th pick. I want Stafford to win a ring. I think he did, for what he did for Detroit. I honestly think they got a decent shot at Tampa Bay this weekend.
Well, talking about people putting too much stock in a seed, I mean,
yeah.
the guy the Rams are playing was a 6th-round pick. It's not necessarily the number in front of your name of when you're picked. It's the quality of the pick. I mean, there's sleepers every year. That's a silly thing for the Lions fans to be rooting for.
Yeah.
But I've been in their shoes before. I went through a 1-31 stretch with the Browns, so I understand where they're coming from. The draft is sometimes the Super Bowl for these teams.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So who do you like in that game?
Well, I like that Stafford finally got a win because they had an interesting stat during the game last night. He was the quarterback for Megatron and Cup now with huge seasons, and he's the common denominator. I always thought he was underappreciated in Detroit, and I'm kind of rooting for him. No offense to Touchdown Tommy or the Buccaneers. I have no ties to the Buccaneers.
No.
I'm the kind of guy that part of the reason I love the NFL is because of the parity and the competition, and I'd like to see somebody new. Now, I'm not going to root for the Rams in the long run. You're not going to like this, but when the Browns were not in the NFL, a lot of Browns fans rooted for the Packers because there's a couple Browns bars in the Green Bay area. Plus, I also like the Packers because they're the only fan-owned team in the league. But let's get back to this game.
That's all right.
I'd love to see the Rams win this game, just because this is going to also sound kind of sadistic too, but I like seeing Odell Beckham succeed because I felt like the Cleveland media and the fans did the same thing to him, which this isn't a good comparison, but they crapped all over Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Back in the late 80s, early 90s. They don't appreciate what they have, and he's looking really good. I had a friends group text last night, and they're like, "Isn't that something? He's making all kinds of plays, and we act like he wasn't helping us at all." It's like, well, maybe it's us.
I thought you were going to tell me you weren't rooting for the Rams because they moved out of Cleveland in 1945.
No, I wasn't even a gleam in anybody's eye at that point.
I wasn't either, but it's fun to look back at history. I thought, wow, man, he really is a historian. That's good.
But I kind of like the makeup of that team too. I like their coach. I like the way they run offense. It would be nice to see them win. And I also think the Rams and the Packers NFC Championship game would be great.
Oh, it's going to be huge. It'll be huge for sure.
Since we're on this game, I heard a fun fact today.
Yeah.
Tom Brady's older than all the remaining coaches in the playoffs.
Oh, that's insane. Oh, my God, man.
Is that true, though? He's not older than the Chiefs coach.
No, he's not older than Andy Reid. Maybe
then that
just
was
the NFC.
That was
Maybe that's
yeah,
what
it was just
is.
the NFC coaches. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because, God, Andy Reid's got to be in his mid-60s at least.
Yeah, I'm looking at the matchups. That's what it was. He's older than all the remaining NFC coaches.
Right. So Cincinnati's going down to Tennessee. That's going to be a decent game as well. I like Joe Burrow. I don't know. I mean, it would be nice to see them win, but I'm worried about their defensive line. I think it's pretty banged up, and I think if Derrick Henry's got the legs, I think that could be trouble for Cincinnati.
I feel like Derrick Henry's not going to have a full workload, though. The Titans confuse me because I see them every week. I watch Red Zone a lot, but
yeah.
I see them every week, and I'm like, how is this team so good? I just don't get it. But they play disciplined football, and they're not flashy. But this is you'll see a lot of my picks are sentimental, but my entire life, my grandfather, who's not with us anymore, but he always rooted for the Bengals. And if you knew back in the 80s in Ohio, you got one game on TV at a time. And, of course, it was always the Browns in Northeast Ohio. So
Sure.
he would actually listen to the Bengals on the radio instead of watching the Browns on TV. And I always said, Grandpa, why do you do that? He hated Art Modell so bad that he was a Bengals fan his whole life.
Oh, wow.
And the problem was the last 15, 20 years of his life, because they stopped being good in, the mid-'80s,
Yeah.
He never got to see him play in the playoffs again. So I always have a little piece of them in my heart, and the Browns aren't in it. So, hey, I'm rooting for the Bengals. I also feel like they have a lot more firepower than the Titans.
They do. There's no doubt about that. And that's why it's kind of a hard game to pick. Speaking of hard games to pick, man, that last one on Sunday night, I'm going to have to take a nap so I can stay up and watch it because it'll get over by 10 o'clock, and that's usually past my bedtime on Sunday nights.
Right.
But you got the Chiefs and the Bills. Man, I like what the Chiefs are rounding into shape. I love, you talk about underdogs. I love the Bills. Man, do you think they got enough to beat Kansas City?
Well, here's some coach speak. The Chiefs are peaking at the right time,
Yes.
but is that smoke and mirrors? Because the Steelers limped into the playoffs. They were the benefactor of the Ravens losing Lamar Jackson for a good portion of late in the season, and they were also a benefactor of the Browns losing, I think, 6 or 7 games by less than 6 points. So I don't know how good the Chiefs are right now. I feel like they're top 3 or 4 in the NFL altogether, but is that 21-point win over the Steelers going to kind of confuse us when we're picking this game?
Yeah.
And the other thing is do the Bills get trapped into I hate to say defensive battle with these two teams? It'll be interesting. If the Bills come out and they're moving the ball, even if they don't score early, I think they have a chance. But if they get stopped a couple times and the Chiefs get up 10-0, even 10-0,
Yeah.
I think this one's over.
I do too. I don't think they're a very good team coming from behind. So interesting. Those are some good picks. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I got 2 questions left for you, Jeff, and I'll let you go. Your Browns are kind of in a precarious situation in my book. You're there. You see it daily. You got a team, to me, that's ready to win, and you got Baker Mayfield. I mean, it's one of those things where do you stick with them? Do you give them an extension, or do you start over, try to go, for a free agent? Man, it's kind of you guys are in a tough spot right now, in my opinion.
We're in a tough spot, and it feels weird because going into this season, after a playoff appearance, we had such high hopes. And I just read today that it's likely that Austin Hooper and Hollywood Higgins aren't back.
Wow.
2 targets that for most of the year were reliable. Now, Austin Hooper kind of fell off at the end of the year, but Njoku came back from injury and took up a lot of those targets. Yeah. And then Conklin, and I think his name's Hubbard, off our lines, likely not coming back. And then our quarterback is some kind of enigma because I don't know what's going on with him. Parts of the year, I thought it wasn't his fault. There was a couple games where we're going into the game against the mediocre run defense, and we throw 10 straight passes to start the game. It's setting him up for failure. But then after the game, media people are posting behind the end zone views of plays where he got sacked, but he was in the pocket for 4 seconds, and there was 3 wide receivers that are wide open, and he doesn't throw to them. It's almost like his brain is scrambled. I don't know what we're going to do with him. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if it was the injury. I don't know if it's the scheme. I don't know if he's just frustrated. Here's what every Browns fan fears. We'll trade him, and then he'll be an all-pro.
Yeah. Oh,
it never fails.
Oh, yeah. It sounds like Detroit. I get it.
Plus, we shuffled through 20-some quarterbacks now since we've been back in the league. So I don't know. I think we stick with them at least one more year. I mean, we were snake-bitten. We lost Kareem Hunt, which really he brings a whole new dynamic to that offense. And then, like I say, not to put it all on the coach's shoulders because, again, we saw film where receivers are wide open and Baker's just not pulling the trigger. And I'll tell you what Baker's problem is here in a minute. But we also had game plans where we throw the ball the first 10 plays of the game. We have one of the best running backs in the league. Why are we throwing it 10 straight times to start the game? It makes no sense.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It makes zero sense why we're doing that. I don't know. And I think Baker's problem, and I've spotted this since day one, and I'm no guru, but I did play the position in college. He's a guy that came from Oklahoma. They played the spread offense. If you watch, next time he starts, watch him. He tends to stare down one guy, and he gets frustrated if that guy's covered. And I think that's why he's missing wide open people because he's not scanning the field properly. I think he has his target, and if that target isn't open, he has to go through his progression. But I think once he hits the progression, I think that's where he starts to panic in his brain, and he gets sacked a lot because of it.
Okay, then I got to ask you a question on that. I lied. I got 2 questions left. Now, you bring that up. You said you played the game. You played in college, all right? Is it too late to teach him to check down receivers then, to scan the field, or is this something that's unfixable? I don't know.
It's fixable because I'll tell you, when I made the leap from high school to college, I was twice as good as I was in high school because of the teaching.
Yeah,
it is fixable. And I've taken as a coach players that have never played the position and they played well. So it is fixable. It's nicer when it's kind of you're born with that knack like a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers, but you can fix it. But they say, Baker's better when we run, and then play action. Well, play action, what do you have in play action? You have 2 guys that you can stare down. You have the short level tight end or running back out of the backfield running an out, and then you have the receiver running the 10-yard out because you're running a bootleg. And and everybody admits those are the best plays he runs.
Okay.
But he doesn't have to scan the whole field. He's scanning half the field.
Right. That makes sense. Because that worries me when you say that about him, because you'd think by now he would be able to do that. So.
They're going to have to teach him what to look for and know what defense they're in and what they're trying to do at that point.
Well, lastly, before I let you go, I'm putting together a list for a pretty cool article that's going to go on the website here within a week. I've asked this on Facebook and on Twitter and whatnot. Jeff, when you were growing up, when you were a young lad back in the day, what athlete was larger than life to you that you wouldn't be able to speak if you were able to meet him when you were a kid?
Well, you want me to go sport by sport or just the one?
Just one. Pick one out of any sport that would be the ultimate athlete that if he walked in when you were, 10 years old or 11 years old, and he walked up to you, you would just be speechless, wouldn't know what to do.
Ooh, man, it's tough. Ernest Biner or Kevin Mack.
Okay.
And I hate to mention two because you have for one.
No, that's fine. No, that's great. So those were the guys back then for you, huh?
Yeah, well, the thing is, when I was 10, we were coming out of the Brian Sipe era.
Yeah.
And then, Mack and Biner had their big years when I was actually a little older than 10. I think the first loss to the Broncos, which is the first time I cried after a football game, I think I was in 8th grade. Okay. So I was a little older than 10. So, and from that team, you could even say Bernie Kosar. It's hard for me to say one, obviously.
Sure. No, I get it. No, I mean, I could name a half a dozen of them as well, but they're mostly Detroit Tigers or Detroit Lions. It's funny. The first one that I had a speechless moment was actually a broadcaster, and I was in college when I covered my first Pistons game, and I sat down at the media luncheon table, and George Blaha came and sat right next to me, and I was just like, but wow, that's great though. Those are awesome.
Well, I'll admit, the number I picked in football in high school and college was because of Art Schlichter. The first football game I ever watched was with my grandpa. I was like 3, and Ohio State's quarterback, it was number 10. So that's why.
There you go.
Now I don't have the gambling and tax evasion issues he has, but I just wore the same number.
Well, there you go. Jeff, this has been a pleasure, man. Thanks for taking time out tonight. I'm glad to hear that the snow has stopped down there.
Oh yeah.
We didn't get any here in Lansing, Michigan, area in Grand Ledge. So just so you know, you can have it.
14 inches, going to be 41 tomorrow. Hopefully it all melts. But hey, I think this was my first time on your show. It was a blast.
Yeah, thank you. You've always been busy, or we've had one kind of, something going on, but I appreciate it, man. Enjoy the games this weekend, and I'm sure we'll be chatting throughout the week. Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lou.
All
Take
right,
care.
Jeff, you bet. Jeff Beck, the janitor, if you will. You can catch him on various shows. He does a lot for us here on the network. He's the glue. He's the mastermind behind 12 Ounce Sports. He's the one that put this together, and it was cool. I always tell this story, and I don't mean to be sentimental, but my first show was, I remember we had a kind of a conference call, a phone conference call when my mom was in the hospital. And I remember breaking away from, visiting her. We went down and took the call. And Jeff was, I can't remember who else was on there. I don't even think anybody else is left from that conference call on the network besides me and Jeff. Well, I remember going back up into my mom's room and telling her about it and how fired up I was. And to see the smile on her face and how excited she was for me is something I will never forget. And so I owe a lot of that to Jeff because, she said, you're doing what you love. To see that, she had the oxygen mask on, and to see her smiling in that, I will always, always remember that. And I've got Jeff to thank for that. And my first show that I did was right after she passed. And so she passed about 5 days later. And I did my first show after that, right when she passed. And it was cathartic for me. It really was. It helped me get through that and remember her smiling. So I've always got that, and I've always got Jeff to thank for that too. So Jeff, thank you, man, and thanks for coming on the show. It's some fun banter, and I can remember those Browns teams from the 80s. Man, you talk about heartbreaking losses there, boy. The drive and the fall. Oh my! I don't mean to bring it up. Sorry, Jeff, but yeah, those were some good teams back in the 80s. Those Cleveland Brown teams. So, hey, we still got a lot to talk about tonight. We're not going anywhere. I'll give you some of my other thoughts about the games, and we're going to talk more about baseball and whatever. We've got lots to talk about here. We're on till 10 o'clock. You're watching the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12 Ounce Sports Platform and Networks and Zingo TV, Channel 761.
12-ounce sports has a new home for betting. BetUS.com is the official place to place your bets and support 12-ounce sports. All you have to do is go to BetUS.com and type in the promo code 120Z and you'll instantly get a deposit bonus. This is America's favorite sports book. And remember, always gamble responsibly.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Captain Lou Extravaganza live here on the 12-Ounce Sports Network and Zingo TV channel 761. Again, we're on our platforms and networks. You check us out on our website, 12ouncesportsradio.com. Also on our Facebook page, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, our YouTube channel. All various different ways you can watch us here on the network. So, and I also want to bring in, you can see it on the screen right here. You're watching us on the network. Check out BetUS. You go to 12-Ounce Sports Radio /BetUS, and it'll direct you right to the website, and you will see all the betting lines for this weekend's games, the football games. And if you're not familiar with it, check it out. It's safe. It's a lot of fun. They've got a lot of great things, a lot of great prop bets. And you can do teasers, parlays. What I like to do, I do like a teaser parlay with all 3 or 4 games. I'll do a round robin, which means you can bet on. But the teaser, the more teams you bet on the parlay, the teaser you can get more points. And I'm just going to tell you right now, the old bald fat guy right here made some gorgonzola this weekend doing that. So, I took the favorites plus San Francisco as well. And the old fat kid got some vacation money saved up because of that. So take my advice. Go to BetUS. And for first-time depositors, it's really cool because they will match your bonus up to 125%, which means you put a C note in, you're going to get an extra $125 to bet with. But the only way you can do that, and you can see it right on the screen, hit the promo code 120Z. And when you do that, you'll take a screenshot of it and then go to our Twitter page and said, the captain sent you right here. That's right. But it's a great way to bet. And if you don't want to bet on sports, they've got a great casino area where you can play some table game slots. They got Pai Gow, you name it. A lot of fun. I play Pai Gow all the time, getting myself in shape for March when my son and I go on a little casino junket. We're going to hit a couple of casinos around the state of Michigan. We're going to go watch a Bucks game over in Milwaukee. We're going to make a guy's week of it. It's going to be a lot of fun. He's graduating soon from college. So the old guy here is feeling old, but we're going to have a lot of fun. But anyways, check it out. BetUS. Go to 12ouncesportsradio.com /BetUS. Take you right there, right to the website. And again, first-time depositors, make sure you use the promo code 120Z. It's right there on the screen. And you will get a 125% bonus. You put $50 in, they're going to give you an extra $62.50 to bet with, so that's $112.50. You put a C note in, like I said, you've got $225 to bet with. It's that simple. That is the captain's lock of the decade, lock of the century. It's free money to bet with. Why not do it? It's that simple. It's a no-brainer. So make sure you do it. So, hey, thanks to Jeff Beck for coming on again, talking some pro football, some anecdotes. It's great hearing his feedback and his expertise, especially with Baker Mayfield. It's great. I'm going to check that out with him this year because you watch the games, like he said, I see the Browns games on the Red Zone channel, so I only see the scoring plays. You don't get a chance to see it full blown. I'm going to watch and see if he learns to check down and check some other receivers. I can't believe he doesn't know. I believe it, but it's hard to fathom that he actually has not learned that yet. And he's going into what, his 4th or 5th year with the Brownies? I think the 5th year already. He's a good talent coming out of Oklahoma, but his Browns are an enigma for sure. But, we look at the games one more time. We'll talk real briefly about that. Then I want to talk a little bit about the coaching the coaching situations. Something I brought up in the first hour of the show. We've got the matchups this weekend, Kansas City and Buffalo. Obviously, that, to me, on paper is the marquee matchup. But it seems like we always get a game that sneaks up on us that might be the class of the weekend that we don't think will be. Will it be San Francisco and Green Bay? I don't know. I'm gone on record saying Green Bay is going to win by double digits. I'm a big believer that they're on a mission this year, and Green Bay has improved. And like I mentioned with Jeff, me, it's tough for me to sit back and give Green Bay props because I grew up such a anti-fan of the Packers. But let's be honest here. To me, they're the best team in football, hands down. And I think, having home field advantage, I think they're finally going to take advantage of it and head to SoFi to win the Super Bowl. I think they're gonna beat San Francisco. I'm not sold on them the way they played against Dallas because I think Dallas is very overrated. So the San Francisco team going into Green Bay, it's going to be tough. I mean, never say never, but I got Green Bay winning easily in that one. Tampa Bay and LA, again, I'm voting for Matt Stafford. I like what he did last night. They didn't have to count on him. 17 passes is all he threw. He still had 207 yards. Like I said in the first half hour, or on Mitch's show, he's going to make a mistake. He's Matt Stafford. He does that. As long as it's not a pick six, he's going to throw a pick. He's due. How do they respond to that if they've got that opportunity to keep it up? Tampa, to me, they're beatable. There's something about them, and I know they've got Mike Evans is going to be Tampa's facing a defense I think can put the heat on Brady. I think they can harass him. Now, I love Tom Brady. 7 rings, Michigan guy, I get it. But I just think LA can really put the heat on him down there and make it difficult for him. They're going to I would pressure him all game. I would, 75% of the time I'd be sending somebody. And what was Bruce Arians thinking, by the way, in that game against Philadelphia, leaving him in the fourth quarter? You're up 31-0. You're damn lucky he didn't get hurt. And they gave up, I know, a couple of garbage time touchdowns, but what is he doing in there at 31-0 in the fourth quarter? Do you not trust Gabbert that much? Wow. Bruce Arians, to me, never been a big fan of him. He's got that air of arrogance he's always had. And I don't know. Yeah, he's a Super Bowl winning coach. He's a great coach most of the time. I just don't get that. And I know you got Tom Brady who wants to stay in for every play. Who doesn't? Who is an athlete wants to come out of a game? Aaron Rodgers doesn't. Matt Stafford, Jared Goff. Nobody wants to come out. I don't care who you are. LeBron, whatever. But after, common sense has to take the lead. They're damn lucky nothing bad happened. But I look at the blocking. I look at the offensive line play for Tampa, and I think LA's got a shot. They could put some heat on them. And if Matt Stafford can limit the mistakes, and he's going to make one or two, but I think if he limits them, they win. I think it's going to be a one-score game, but I think they go there and win on Sunday afternoon. I really do. And then the AFC games, Jeff brought up some good points. The firepower of Cincinnati, you got to look at it. Burrow, Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon. I don't think Joe Mixon gets enough credit either. He's really come into his own in Cincinnati. I don't know. Again, what worries me is their defensive line. They're banged up more so than they were last week. Tennessee's rested. I think if they get into a shooting match, I think they win. I don't know. Joe Burrow is just playing so well right now. Momentum might be key there. But let's see what happens when they have to handle adversity. If they have to, if it comes up. If they're down a score, if they're down 10 points going into third quarter. Can Tennessee control can Tennessee control the momentum and of the game, the tempo of the game that much to keep Burrow off the field? And then Kansas City and Buffalo. Wow, I mean, I look at that and I see, it's a coin flip. It really is. Part of me thinks Kansas City's rounding into form, as we mentioned in the last segment. But Buffalo's defense is playing really well. I think the one thing that worries me about Buffalo is, can they keep any kind of semblance of a running game going? Because if Kansas City shuts that down, could be problems. And like Jeff mentioned, what happens if Kansas City gets up 2 scores? How do they react? How is Buffalo as a come-from-behind team? I don't know. So, I mean, that's something I want to keep an eye on. But it's going to be a great game. It's a great way to finish off the weekend. 6:30 on Sunday night is Kansas City and Buffalo from, Arrowhead. And we all know how loud it's going to be there. I mean, Buffalo obviously is quite the scene. The Bills Mafia there. Boy, it's going to be a great atmosphere in Kansas City. It's going to be a great atmosphere everywhere. I joke about Lambeau. I joke about the Packers. I don't like them. Grew up not a Packer fan. But I will be the first to admit, if you haven't been to a game at Lambeau, you got to go. Now, preferably in warmer weather in September. If you're a diehard, well, first of all, you won't get a ticket right now at Lambeau, but I've been to Lambeau in freezing weather, and it's not fun. I mean, it's cold, but you have a blast. Their fans are pretty cool. They are good to the opposing team. It really is a party atmosphere. It really is a lot of fun. I love going to games there. And then you got Tennessee. I'm sure is going to be great. And, of course, Tampa, they're the Super Bowl champs. So, fun weekend of football coming up. Really looking forward to watching it. 2 games on Saturday, obviously 4:30 and 8:15, I believe, are the start times for those games. And then 3 and 6:30 on Sunday. A little bit earlier, which is good for those of us that have to worry about it being a school night, having to get up early. Those of us that have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work. Yeah, there you go. So, hey, I wanted to touch on something here. We talked a little bit about it in the first hour of the show, first segment or two. We still got, 8 job openings in the NFL right now. You've got Chicago. You've got Minnesota. You've got Houston. You've got Jacksonville. You got Vegas. You got Denver. You got the Giants. I know I'm missing one. Can't remember the other one. Drawing a blank. Anyways, I hear, Miami. You hear who the leading candidates are for some of these places. I hear that Brian Flores might be the leading candidate in Chicago. I'm surprised he's not in Houston, but, who knows? It's still the jury's out. A lot of places. One thing that kind of struck a nerve for me, and I touched on this a little bit. I heard this afternoon. I heard this on the Colin Cowherd show. I was listening to it. They talked about how they interviewed Hines Ward for the job. Now, Hines Ward was a great player at Pittsburgh. I got nothing against Hines Ward. Nothing at all. I think it'd be a great idea. Houston's got a bad culture. There's no doubt about it. David Culley couldn't fix it, but I think he got a raw deal there. So kind of wonder who would want to take on that position there with that kind of leadership. You stub your toe, they're going to fire you after 1 year. But Hines Ward is going to be hired to change the culture. And he gets the green light and he gets, everybody's on board with it. And I am too. I think if he could be like, they're calling him like a CEO, he gets coordinators, a good OC and a good defensive coordinator. Okay, I get that. But isn't that what Dan Campbell got hired to do in Detroit? And he got blasted for it. Now, I know some of the things he says in his press conferences were whacked out, biting kneecaps and this and that. Right now they're in the Arctic Ocean, but stick around, they're heading to the Caribbean. I love that one. I really like that one. That's kind of cool. But he got blasted. Detroit got blasted for that hire. No experience, blah, blah, blah. He was 5-7 in Miami with, whatever. So all of a sudden it's good in Houston, but not in Detroit. Now, I will give Colin Cowherd a little bit of credit because he gave Detroit some love. He gave Campbell some love from how hard they played. You hear the vibe out of the Detroit locker room. It's something they haven't had in a long time. They sure as hell didn't have it with Matt Patricia, the tough guy, you my way or the highway kind of a thing, blah, blah, blah. And then even with Jim Caldwell, he had his detractors. Dan Campbell's building something there. We all knew going in, Detroit wasn't, I kid and say they're going to win 10 games. I'll say that next year. But you looked at that schedule. Detroit started out, 0-8 before they tied Pittsburgh? That was a murderer's row of a schedule right there. I'm not surprised they went 0-7. Some of the decisions they made, they're learning. Detroit's pretty much blown it up and starting over. That's what Houston's going to have to do. I guess my biggest problem with how it's handled, all of a sudden, Hines Ward, if he gets that job, and I hope he does, but he's going to be hailed a hero or Campbell's hailed a buffoon. I don't get it. Because I'll tell you, Detroit's got some draft picks to work with. If Brad Holmes can put together another good draft, the Lions, they'll be creeping up. Minnesota's a dumpster fire right now. They're dealing with a quarterback that's going to be a $35 or $45 million cap hit, Kirk Cousins. He's a stat patter. He's Dak Prescott. He's Tony Romo. They don't win the big games. They're in trouble. The Bears, I don't know. They're kind of an enigma. They've got a decent defense. But they got Justin Fields, who's going to have to start over, the new coach, new core. He's intriguing. But how good is he really? Now, I know Detroit's got Jared Goff. They're going to give him another year. They've got 1 year left. That's not really a quarterback-rich draft. So they'll get a pass, not keeping him around. But I don't know. And I look at some of these other openings. Obviously, you're hearing the Jim Harbaugh to the Las Vegas Raiders now, especially with Mike Mayock gone. But here's my question. I look at some of the teams around the leagues. And as much as I like to poo-poo the New York Giants, they're finally doing it right. They're going to hire a GM before the coach. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Hire a GM first and then get a coach? They're on the same page. I look at teams like Jacksonville. What a crap show that was down there. And the Bears were a mess. The Vikings, they're starting over with GM. Is it just me, or is there more GM hires out there this year than there ever has been? I know coaches usually get anywhere from 5 to 8 every year, especially now with the what have you done for me lately. But I don't know. I look at Brian Flores. I think he'd be a good fit in Chicago. I think he'd be a good fit in Houston. I look at some of the teams that are looking for head coaches that you got to wonder, like Denver. Great defense, above average. And they've got a few playmakers, but they've got nothing at quarterback. They got to start over. Does a coach come in thinking, what kind of a shot do I have at Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson? Or what am I got to work with? Who are we going to draft? They're kind of in a pickle in Denver. I don't know what they're going to come up with. You're going to get a young guy with an opportunity to coach, but you're going to inherit a tough situation. And, obviously when you come into a situation, you don't inherit great situations. I think the most ideal situation may be Vegas. David Carr, Derek Carr, David. Derek Carr's not a bad quarterback. I think he's someone you can build around. He proved it. He guided that ship through that. You talk about a poop storm. That was Vegas with Ruggs and that other YO, that other first-round pick of Mayox that ended up getting cut because he got in trouble. But I think that's the best position. I know you got Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence. They need a lot of help. They're light years away. And Miami, here's a team that won 8 out of 9, and they let the coach go. Can a coach come in and deal with that ego of an owner that's second maybe only, or third maybe only, to Daniel Snyder and Jerry Jones? I don't know. But again, like I said, what got me going on this is the thing with Hines Ward. And I like the fact that they're thinking about him. I think he'd be a great hire. Nothing personal against him. I think it's a great idea. But all of a sudden, it's great in Houston, but it was a buffoon, dumb move in Detroit. Building the culture. You got to build the culture in Houston just like you got to do it in Detroit. And I know Detroit only went 3-13-1, but I'm telling you, they're 3-1-1 in their last 5 starts for Goff. And they wanted to play for him. You could tell in that game against Green Bay. Granted, Rodgers didn't play much in the second half, but they didn't quit either, especially when they got behind. You could tell the genuine joy they had to play with Campbell. And it's a silver lining that I'm going to take as a diehard Lions fan who has been in purgatory for 56 years I've been alive. I started following the Lions in 1970 when they lost 5-0 to Dallas in that playoff game. We didn't go to the playoffs again until 1982 in that strike-shortened year. We got blasted by Washington. Who can remember that when they only played 9 games? Remember that? They didn't have the scab players they did in 87. But they played 9 games. The top 8 teams went in. Detroit qualified the last weekend of the year. I'll never forget watching it. On a tight end reverse, Rob Rubik scored it for the Lions against Green Bay. And then Detroit went in the next week and just got blasted by Washington, 1-8. Then, of course, in 83, they won the division and played San Francisco in the playoff game and they got beat on the Hail Mary, or not the Hail Mary, but the missed field goal. Then it's been sad. The 90s were decent for Detroit, but it's been rough. So anyways, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see where the dominoes fall for the coaches. But if it's good for Houston, why is it bad for Detroit? They're both the same. I don't know. I'll get off my soapbox for that. Again, thank everybody for coming on the show tonight. It's been an absolute treat as always. We got some great guests lined up in the coming weeks. Can't wait to have them on as soon as we get. I know I've got confirmation, just not sure what Tuesdays we're going to have them. But I'm telling you what, you got to stick around. You got to follow me on Twitter @TheRealCaptainLou to keep up to date on some of the great guests that we're going to have coming up. So excited. And it's going to be great conversation, great storytelling. That's what we really want to do. We're going to have some great ACHA coaches coming up. We mentioned their national tournament is about 55 days away down in St. Louis. Great location for it, right in the center of the country, which is perfect for ACHA coaches, the club hockey, whatever. So can't wait for that. We got a few minutes left. We touched on baseball a little bit. And, I was on with Mitch, the Burn with Mitch before the first half of the Dynamic Duo on Tuesday nights here on the network. And he's a big baseball guy. And it got me thinking again about it. The players and the owners met not very long last Thursday. Unproductive. MLB brought their proposal. Part of it, I started reading a little bit of it about a incentive-laden arbitration and whatever draft pick thing. It's going to come down to this. The players want free agency earlier. They want arbitration earlier. They want a competitive balance. A guy like Max Scherzer comes on and says he wants competitive balance. Okay. The only way you're going to get competitive balance is if you have a salary cap. And the players aren't going to go for that. They don't want to be hamstrung. They want to make all the money they can. There's no way that's going to happen. There's no way a team like Kansas City or Pittsburgh or Baltimore, or I know Milwaukee is contending right now, but they're in a smaller market. These smaller market teams, Oakland, they're doing good now, but some of these smaller market teams are never going to be competitive. You can't have it both ways. But like Mitch and I were talking in his show, the first thing you got to do is get to the table. And it's ridiculous they're not meeting. I know it's dead time right now. This is the perfect time to get something done. They're both playing chicken. And I'm just here to say one more time about it. Baseball barely survived the strike in '94. It lost a lot of fans. The juiced up home run chase brought them back. And then they got nailed for it. They got busted. Baseball has lost so many young viewers over the years. I look at my son. He's a big NBA fan. We went to a Pistons game a couple weeks ago. I enjoyed it. I had fun. They play a different style of game than they did when I was growing up, but it was fun. The crowd was into it. It's a younger crowd. The younger crowd is not going to baseball games. My son has no desire to go to a major league game. I took him to a couple, 2 or 3. He would rather go to football or basketball. And that's what it is right now with the younger generation. Baseball is going to lose the older generation real quick if they don't get something done. If they strike, or if there's a lockout into, say, May, which I know may sound extreme, but you never know. Both sides are digging their heels in, and it's too bad. Because I love baseball, and it was at one time my favorite sport. We talked about it with Mark Van Vliet. His all-time favorite was Al Kaline. Al finished playing right about when I started to really get into the Tigers in the early 70s. He was the man. When I first started Little League, my number was 6. And then it went to Pete Rose. Charlie Hustle. This is back before he knew he gambled and this and that, whatever. But baseball was everybody's sport, man. There was nothing like, we talked about listening to games on the radio. My summers, and I know I've mentioned this, the Detroit Free Press they would come out with a composite schedule, a full-page ad. Every team, every game, all 162 games on a full page. I would pin that on my wall in my bedroom, pick out the games that I could listen to at 10:30 at night in the summertime. Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, Detroit, Milwaukee, St. Louis, Cleveland, the White Sox, the Cubs, living up on Lake Superior. I used to get a ton of stations. The Montreal Expos. And there was always a game I could listen to late at night, 10:30 at night, a West Coast game. Or sometimes, back then, they didn't start games till 11 o'clock sometimes, which was 8 o'clock their time. So I was in my glory. I would stay up with my little transistor until 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, listening, make sure nobody downstairs heard me, but I'd listen to the Tigers or the Brewers or whoever playing out west against the Dodgers or the Angels or the A's. Then Seattle in 77, a little bit later on. But Seattle wasn't in existence. So, yeah, always a game. San Francisco was always fun. But they're going to lose that. they're on the edge of losing a lot of players with this strike. I hope they get it straightened out quick. Well, hey, that's going to do it. Join us next week on Tuesday night. We'll talk about the conference championship games. We'll talk more ACHA hockey. Thanks to Mark Van Vliet. Great conversation with him tonight, talking about Aquinas and about what's on tap for them throughout the year as they head towards their march to nationals. And, of course, the janitor, Jeff Beck, talking NFL football and Cleveland Browns. And I want to thank you, the viewer, for being a part of us again here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza. Hey, that's going to do it. This reminder, keep your heads up, keep your sticks down, keep your feet moving, and as always, keep your minds open. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week here on the Captain Lou Extravaganza Live here on the 12 Ounce Sports Platform and Networks and Zingo TV.